Hello, rock and roll rebels! Welcome to a special episode. This is not a ramble. This is not a Thundercrack Thursday. This is something new and exciting and a one-time only thing until I go on another trip. I will be showing and telling y'all about all the cool stuff that I discovered about music on my trip and also reprising some knowledge I gained the first time I went to Mississippi back in June. That is the primary purpose of this episode. The secondary purpose is to announce that, unless there's some popular demand for it, my Ramble On with Rosie episodes are now only going to be available as podcasts. So y'all can check them out there. I will probably, to make up for that, post other stuff here, like I may post my Thundercrack Thursday episodes both here and on my Instagram, so y'all can see those and find out some fun backstories to dance songs. I also am working on an idea to do like a song a week and do like a little 10-minute episode on it about, the musical background and stuff like that. So that will probably end up here on YouTube. So stick around for that. I'm not disappearing entirely. I'm just reorienting my where I'm posting things. So that announcement out of the way, let's get to the fun stuff. The trip was great. Mississippi is wonderful. If you love music, you should go to this state. Even if it's just a little detour down from Memphis to go to Clarksdale, which is only about an hour and a half away. Clarksdale is where Muddy Waters was from. He was born outside of it. Clarksdale has the Delta Blues Museum, where I bought this lovely t-shirt back on my trip in June. The back of it's really cool, but I'm not standing up and turning around to show you. I don't know if you'd see it. Anyways, it's got a guitar on. Anyways, so Delta Blues Museum is possibly the biggest musical mecca of any of the places I went. Not necessarily that everybody goes there, but everybody should go there. It is wonderful. There are so many write-ups in the museum on artists you will never hear of anywhere else. It's just saturated with music history to the point that, like, you suffocate in it. And the building it's in itself is historical. It's the old train depot in Clarksdale, the same train depot that Muddy Waters left Mississippi for Chicago for fame and fortune on. Also inside the building, they have Muddy Waters' original cabin stored. The structure is inside the structure of the railway station, which is really cool. Definitely gives you goosebumps when you touch it and you're like, holy cow. A musical legend who the face of rock and roll and music as we know it would not exist without this man. Like, way underrated, wonderful influence. Just enough cannot be said about Muddy Waters' influence. The British blues invasion owes a lot to Muddy Waters, and they know it. In fact, I think there's even a collaboration with Muddy Waters and good old Rory Gallagher from Ireland, one of the best and also underrated guitarists. Anyways, so much in the Delta Blues Museum. They've got the guitar that the members of ZZ Top, at least Gibbons, I think all three of them were involved, built out of a log from the log structure that was Muddy Waters' house. This thing's maybe the size of my shed studio that I'm in right now, which is not very big. If you've seen the Thundercrack Thursday episodes, you kind of have some rough ideas of the dimensions of this building that I record in. It's not that big. And that's about the size of his cabin. Maybe a little bit bigger than my little shed that I record in out here. So it's really interesting. And they've got all sorts of stuffs and memorabilias, suits and dresses that were worn by musicians, unique early instruments that were used by, early black artists, that were basically inventing the blues at the time. Like, I seriously wish that they had a book that comprised all the information that's stored in the museum because I cannot absorb it all. And I've been through it twice, and I still am like, I got only a tenth of what's there. There's so much. It just overwhelmed my little brain. Um, so Delta Blues Museum, check it out. Amazing. They don't let you take pictures, otherwise I would have taken pictures and then remembered the knowledge that way. But, so, Delta Blues Museum. Top highlight as far as music stuff goes. The second highlight for me, which I didn't go to when I went back in June, and it's not in Mississippi, but I went this time, is my best friend and I made a day trip to Memphis for the original intent of going to Graceland, which we did. And then we realized Graceland is really overpriced, so we went to the Disney exhibit for $15 that's at the Expo Center at Graceland, and did not go see Elvis's house. We were tempted to pull up Bruce Springsteen and try and climb over some structures, or like inveigle our way into a group that was getting off of a bus, but they were all senior citizens, so we would have stuck out pretty prominently, and they probably would have asked us for our tickets, which would have been most unfortunate. But we were tempted to. We got dinner there, or lunch there, because I ain't going outside of the Graceland secure compound to find lunch in Memphis when it's just me and a even smaller, more vulnerable female friend of mine. I ain't dumb. However, I did get me some loot at their gift shop. This fantastic mug, which is a nice big mug, and I'm a huge fan of big mugs because I like to drink a lot of tea. It was, I got some playing cards and a little crystal thing for my mom, but that's aside from the point. So Graceland was kind of a letdown. I'm sure if you had the $75 to spend to see the house, it'd be great, but $75 is a lot of merch, so we just went to the gift shop and skipped the house. However, I am grateful that we did it, because had we not went to Graceland, I would not have really made a trip to Memphis just to go to Sun Studios, but I am very grateful I went to Sun Studios. This was well worth it. Not the sticker specifically, but going to Sun Studios, where I also got a t-shirt, and I think some pins for my ridiculously over festooned jacket that I have. Sun Studios was so interesting. Like, you go up the stairs and they have this exhibit with like artifacts behind, like glass, so you can't touch them and run off with them. And, channeling or traveling through things like, what Sam Phillips did before, how Sun Studios got started, early acts that were associated with it, like B.B. King, and then working into the Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis stuff, which I found a new hero of mine, which would be Marianne Keister. Anyway, she's the lady who heard Elvis come in on audition, and then like made a tape, and like noted good ballad singer, and Sam Phillips didn't really want a ballad singer, so he sort of stuck Elvis on the back burner until Marianne just would not stop pestering him. And so they finally called him in, and then Elvis was like singing ballad stuff, but like, was really nervous. So everybody else sort of went for a smoke break, and he just started goofing around, and was loose because he wasn't feeling the pressure. And he wasn't doing a ballad, he was doing That's All Right Mama, which is not a ballad. It's rock and roll, which is, what Elvis is great at. So, and it covers Jerry Lee Lewis and I didn't buy this there, I already owned this, but the $1 Million Sessions with Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, and I want to say Johnny Cash was around on this thing too. Yep, Johnny Cash was also there. So, you can understand why it's called that. You can understand why Sam Phillips had money after selling some of these artists to bigger labels to go start a hotel chain that you may have heard of. It's called Holiday Inn. Amongst, a man of many talents. But finding out about his assistant, Marion, was really inspiring, I think I'd heard the name before, but with Marion kind of being a unisex name, I had assumed it was a male. So it was really cool that there's this, it was a girl who helped get Elvis his career start, which is very, very empowering and cool to know. So I thought that was awesome. Sun Studios was great. One of the coolest things is you can go downstairs, where the recording area was, or the rehearsal area and the recording area are both down there. And by specific instruction of Sam Phillips, there is a microphone. And anybody who comes through is allowed to hold it, pose with it, handle it. It's also the microphone that pretty much everybody who recorded at Sun Studios before they moved the recording studio portion elsewhere used. So you get to pose and touch a microphone that was used by Elvis and Johnny Cash and anybody else who went through Sun, which is quite a few people. So that's pretty legit. There's also a drum kit that was donated by the band U2 to help fundraise for something like that. Anyways, there's a drum kit there too. That's kind of cool. My best friend accidentally was standing in the same spot where Elvis was standing when Elvis was recording That's Alright Mama. So that's kind of cool. She was just happened to be standing there, and then we looked down, there's a black spot right as the lady who was leading the tour was like, and that's where Elvis stood, and we're like, oh. So that was fun. That she just happened to be in the right spot at the right time. Taking pictures for the microphone was also a lot of fun. Sun Studios is well worth the $15 and buying some merch that you don't necessarily need in the gift shop. And their gift shop's pretty reasonably priced. So, all in all, highly recommend Sun Studios. More than Graceland. More than, it's definitely up there with the Delta Blues Museum and the sites in Tupelo, because it has an authenticity. Graceland feels like a commercialism extravaganza. It doesn't feel like the spirit of the man who gave away, Cadillacs is being carried on very well when they're charging you $75 just to see his house. Also, they don't have lactose-free smoothies, and my best friend's lactose intolerant, so 10 out of 10 would not recommend getting smoothies that are not only do they not offer dairy-free, but they also don't have real fruit in them either. So, Graceland was somewhat disappointing, but, we still had fun, and it was at least a secure location in Memphis to get lunch, so not a total loss. Anyways, moving on from Graceland and out of Clarksdale, more towards the eastern half of the state, Tupelo, which is where Elvis was born, is really cool. The Birthplace, highly recommend, because the Birthplace, on its grounds, you have the house he was born in the original location, hasn't been moved, same spot. The house Elvis Presley was born in is there. They moved the church that he went to as a kid from a mile away or wherever it was to the grounds of the Birthplace. They do a really cool kind of immersive exhibit inside the church, sort of briefly recreating the kind of music that Elvis grew up with, because his first introduction to music was at his church. And so that's really informative, really cool. The Birthplace is really cool because you're like, there's only one bedroom. These people were and that wasn't like their house was exceptionally small. Everybody around in that neighborhood was kind of that poor. One of the ladies, when I talked to her back in June, was telling me that, we think of people not having any indoor plumbing back then, which, this is the 30s, so the cities are starting to get, more utilities. But, country folk not having indoor plumbing. I didn't realize that, a whole block, a whole neighborhood, one block of a whole neighborhood might share the same outhouse. There's poor, and then there's that poor. So, that's just, phenomenal that somebody would come out of that, would sort of kind of help explain why Elvis was so generous. Because, he knew what it felt like to be on the other end of the spectrum, and, was going to do whatever he could to help other people out and, make their day, which he did in his brief but wonderful life. Speaking of the life of Elvis, there is a book I highly recommend. I've only gotten through about half of it, but it's called Destined to Die Young by Sally Hodel. She actually signed it for me when I was back there in June. I met her, really cool lady. The guy who works at the hardware store, that's the hardware store where Elvis Presley's mom bought him his guitar, highly recommended this book. Well researched, there's lots of sources in the back and notes, really well done, and it basically is covering how drugs killed Elvis, but not in the way that we traditionally think of. As in, it wasn't the typical rock star dying of drugs. Elvis had a lot of genetic and health issues and was probably never going to live very long, and the drugs that he was taking were like prescribed and medical, and it wasn't for funsies. It was because he was trying to still perform while dying, basically. In a nutshell. It's pretty much what was going on. So, we were never going to have him very long, sadly. But we were blessed to have him for as long as we did. So yeah, highly recommend, because it's not just a history of all of Elvis's, life. It's a history of his life, frequently referencing back to the lens of all of his health conditions. Because some of the things, like the stomach issues, had been there since he was a child. Like, he always had these things. Like, if I remember correctly, where is it? It says on the back. I thought it was on here. Anyways, basically he had failure in 9 out of the 11 major organs in his body when he died, and 5 of those organs had been not great since birth. So, yeah, Elvis persevered through a lot to do what he did. Not unlike one of the gentlemen in the band that I will be making my ramble about this week, and whose absolutely adorable Funko I got today in the mail. Another man with a lot of issues who changed the face of music. Also, in the course of the last couple days, and before my trip and after my trip, while I was on my trip in Tupelo, they have 2 really good record stores. Highly recommend. They're right up there with the place with the delicious French fries. Literally best French fries I've ever had in my whole life. The place is called the Blue Canoe. If you're within 3 hours of Tupelo, make a detour. The fries are worth it, even without the crack sauce. That's what they call it. It's sort of like a cheese sauce, but with sausage, but way better than that sounds even. Anyways, so they have a record store, one of which is called Greatest Hits, and they give me a sticker for free, which normally they charge for the stickers. And the other one is, I believe it's Rockstar Records, which is where I got this. It's new. I've since removed the cellophane because I was rocking out to it the other day. Sadly, it's the only one they had. I really want the Ramones Leave Home, but I'll have to settle for this till I find that one. Also, speaking of record stores, in Vicksburg, there's a really cool record store in the upstairs of an antique shop called Mighty River Records, which they have lots of records and lots of merch. So if you're in Vicksburg, check it out. I was late picking up my best friend from the airport because I found a record store. She understood. Which, at that record store, where'd they go? At that record store in Vicksburg, I acquired this, appropriate for this season of Halloween, Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare. And I also acquired this, which I'd been looking for a while, because my dad is a huge Grand Funk fan, to the point that somewhere around here, probably in this bag, I got him well, take my word for it, I got my dad a Grand Funk Railroad sticker with the thumbs up and stuff, because I don't know where it went. It's probably around here somewhere. Anyways, hopefully I didn't lose it. Sorry, things were a bit scattered. But at Rockstar Records, I got the Ramones, I got Billy Joel's Innocent Man, which is one of my favorite albums I don't have yet. And The Find of All Finds, because I've been looking for it. And the third Southside Shawnee album. It was slightly scratched on one side, so the dude gave me a discount, and I appreciated that. And I've been looking for this for a long time, because I've got the first two. And I wanted this one. I wanted, like, the original three, that Stevie produced. Speaking of Stevie, when I came home, look who is in my mailbox. I have been listening to it on audiobook, as well as perusing it in paperback form. Cannot recommend enough. It's everything that I hoped it would be. It makes you laugh. It makes you think. It is worth it just for his relating the story of his encounter with the draft board, which is just gold. Highly recommend listening to that on the audiobook. Like, get the audiobook, because the man knows how to narrate his own words really well, kind of like Bruce Springsteen did with Born to Run. Like, I cannot recommend listening to the audiobooks of these two guys' autobiographies enough. And they're really good. Really, really adds character to the book to hear them narrate it themselves. Also, because I got it through Backstreets, it's signed. And I'm very happy. See? I'm a huge Stevie fan, as everybody knows, because I mention his name like once a week at least. But also at that really cool record store where I got Southside and the Ramones, they also had stickers, like really cool stickers that you don't find. Like, where else are you gonna find a sticker of fabulous aristocratic pirate-looking David Bowie? I also got the Ramones sticker there too. Strange Brew is a coffee chain in Mississippi that I highly recommend. Because I like avoiding Starbucks as much as possible. Because I like finding the small chains or the one shop only shops. Hence why I like PJ's Coffee. Ah, here it is. The sticker I got from my dad. I have it. If he doesn't want it, I'll take it and stick it on something, but not my laptop because it's running out of room. In addition to that, at the Greatest Hits Records, Books, and More place, which also has like a decor kind of stuff in the back, I got a couple of DVDs. First and foremost, I got, well, not first and foremost, but one of them, I got a documentary on Joe Strummer, which is really good. It's got members from other bands, like Bono's in it, members of The Clash. It's got snippets of interviews with Joe himself. It's very illuminating. I learned so much watching this thing. So, highly recommend The Future is Unwritten about Joe Strummer. Really good. Also there, though musical related, though not in the traditional rock and roll sense that I usually talk about, is I got one of my favorite musicals, which I've been looking for on DVD. Said woman on the cover is also the source of inspiration for Joe Perry as a young man. If you've read Rocks, you know what I mean. But, excellent film if you like musicals. Phenomenal 3-character performance by Peter O'Toole. I grew up with this movie. It is fantastic. cannot recommend enough. It is a great film, even if you don't like musicals. So, all in all, I love it. If you don't recognize the title, it's based off the story of Don Quixote. So, that out of the way, to the real find of my trip. Rock and Roll High School! Sorry, that was my Joey Ramone impersonation. I have never seen a more accurate representation of myself in film until I watched this and saw Riff Randall. I was like, oh my gosh, it's literally me. Up to and including her favorite character in the band, member of the band, is my favorite character, or member in the band. Great, 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 great movie. Underrated. It may be cheesy, but how many other teen movies do you know where the quarterback isn't socially adept and is the awkward one who doesn't know how to talk to girls? Like, that alone makes it unique. The fact that the punk girl is blonde with pigtails and dancing merrily on top of tables like, she's grooving and gets accused of being a cheerleader. It defies so many stereotypes, and it's a great movie. I think you can actually find it, full length on YouTube. It was funny, my best friend and I had watched it on Crackle, Popcorn, whatever, one of those places you can watch movies for free. Had watched it, Tuesday night, and then or Monday or Tuesday night, and then, the Wednesday or Thursday, we're looking at the DVDs at Greatest Hits Records, and she's like, hey, Rosie, look what I found, and I kind of squealed, and I was like, she let me buy it rather than buy it for herself and take it home, which I very much appreciated. Thank you, Jackie, because this movie is my life, or what I wish my life would be. Honestly, Riff Randall's daydream scene is my mind 24/7. So, really, really fun movie. It's kind of like American Graffiti for the punks. It's great. Except for even more screwball. It's like screwball American Graffiti for the punks. It's really great. And speaking of that, right before I left, these two items showed up. Which, this is really good. I've watched it. Highly recommend. Even Johnny Ramone himself recommended this. He approved of it, and I don't know how much you know about Johnny Ramone, but he's not known for approving of a lot of things. Think Pete Townsend and Chuck Berry. He's in that vein of rock music playing human being who's got a reputation for being a little taciturn. Somewhat unfairly at times, though somewhat fairly at other times. Also, this came, which is the graphic novel that they made of the history of the Ramones. Not that I'm that big into graphic novels, but I will take what few resources on the Ramones I can find. Which there really should be more. The more I discover that there's less out there about them, the more frustrated I get. As much as I adore Joey, there should be at least 3 more of these, and there's not. There's only Joey, which is cool, because I love Joey, and he's going to look great up there with the rest of my fictitious rock band consisting of Joe Perry, Roger Taylor of Queen, Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses, and Elvis Presley. It's going to look phenomenal up there. But there needs to be a Johnny and a Dee Dee and a Tommy, and quite possibly a Marky and a CJ too. Definitely at least Johnny and Dee Dee in addition to Joey, and there's not. And it frustrates me. Just like conversations I have with people who have heard the name Ramones, but don't actually know anything that they did. They're like I had somebody I knew try to BS their way through it. They're like, oh, yeah, they're sort of the 80s version of, and then they mentioned Richie Valens. And I was like, not Richie Valens, yeah. The guy who did La Bamba. And I'm like, are you making the mistake that the guy who became their promoter made and thinking that they're Spanish? Because they're not. And also, they're not the 80s version of anything. They started in the 70s. And they are, they are the first punk band. They are the best. They are just my favorite. And, I mean, not that I don't love The Clash, but the Ramones are great. Hence why I'm doing an episode on them, to sort of rectify the fact that not as many people know about them as I thought knew about them, and that's sad. Because they're so dang influential. Popular music as we know it, especially in the rock category, would not exist in the form that it does had it not been for the Ramones. Even Joe Strummer of The Clash acknowledged that the Ramones album and their following concert appearances in England were like a huge piece. They were like a bridge from the past to the current stuff that those bands that they inspired tried to do. And they get no love, and no credit, and no, like, hit songs, even though everybody knows their songs, but they sometimes don't know it because they get used in movies. Most people have heard Blitzkrieg Bop or I Want to Be Sedated at some point in their life. So, when it comes to my Ramble On with Rosie episode this week, get ready to go to Rock and Roll High School, because we will be discussing the Ramones. Which I got this book it arrived while I was gone. I had so many books and merch, and this is why I'm broke right now, and I don't care. I mean, I was doing good about saving money until I found Ramones necklaces, which I got this one, and I got the one of the seal, and I haven't stopped wearing this one since, and I got the Joey Funko, and now I'm like, Rosie, stop! You cannot spend money! You're literally broke from your trip! Bad! Stop! But that is a brief summary of my adventures, discoveries, and other fun things. I love this mug. Graceland may have been overrated and overpriced, but this mug was kind of worth it, because I love me a big tea mug. And it's a nice big mug. As you can see, it's like half the size of my head. Also, when I went to the Birthplace, I told myself I wasn't going to go to the gift shop, but I went to the gift shop because, let me demonstrate. This isn't just a pink Cadillac, which has both Springsteen and Elvis connotations. It actually, well, if I go the right direction, moves, which is really cool. So the 6-year-old inside of me had to get the toy car. And the door's open too. Too bad the trunk doesn't open, but in all other regards, this is one heck of a cool toy car. And on that note, after I've show and told y'all to death, I hope you weren't bored by my sharing all my fun stuff. But I had fun, and it was all pretty much musical related fun, other than the friendship related fun. If you check out my best friend's Instagram, in addition to my own, mine's Ramble On with Rosie. Hers is Joe on the Go 50, I want to say. Whatever year Joe Perry was born. And there's lots of fun adventures with her. Her Joe Perry Funko. Not to be confused, my Joe Perry Funko. And my Elvis Presley Funko being buddies. Too bad I didn't have the Joey one yet. But next time, I'll bring Joey and Joe will have grand adventures. And so, on that note, me and my little Funko dude will wish y'all a great week. If you want the Ramble On with Rosie content, hit up, I'll put a link in the description where you can get directly to the feed for it, or you can find it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. And if there's some other podcast place that you want to listen to it, let me know, and I'll try to get it synced up where it posts there. And on that note, I'm going to wish y'all a good night.